when we're handed a bunch of lemons, the best thing to do is make lemonade, right? For me, my lemons last year were a brain injury that almost killed me, the disability caused by it, and the depression that followed all of that mess. But my lemonade has come in the form of gaining some much needed life lessons because of going through all of that mess. Hi, I'm Karoline, and these are the big lessons that life taught me this past year. The first big lesson of this year is aging sucks, but it doesn't have to. Despite the fact that I have always been very overweight, I have also always enjoyed really good health. That was until I turned 50. And then things started going way south. In the past 4.5 years, I have started struggling with bad knees, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, and a bladder that is completely shot. The brain thing is what really did me in, though, because of the amount of rest that I have to have. I am now seeing a lot of improvement in the past few months, but the depression that came because of not being able to participate and keep up with life for so long was just yuck, and I became reclusive and shut down because of it. I guess I got kind of swept away and having one physical problem after another that I started believing that this is just how it is, that aging sucks and that I just have to deal with it. But I'm now realizing that that is seriously bullcrap. Like I said a second ago, it doesn't have to be that way. And I know that because I finally came out of my zoned out of life stupor long enough to look around me and see that there are lots of folks my age and much older than me right in front of me in my neighborhood who are fit and healthy and active and living life. Not only that, but when I watch TV, I see women my age and older who are in action movies and kicking all kinds of butt while I'm sitting there holed up in my house feeling sorry for myself. It is totally pathetic. And I can do better. I've got to get my butt in gear because I should not feel as bad as my mother, who is 22 years older than me. That, of course, means losing weight, which has been a lifelong struggle, but now my life depends on it because I'm not getting any younger and my health is not going to get better unless I get proactive about fixing it. The answer? I started moving my body more and eating better and improving my self-care, which mysteriously almost became non-existent during the COVID shutdowns 5 years ago. And somehow I still guess I haven't fully recovered. But I'm working on it. I'm paying more attention to myself and taking care of myself much better these days. And all of these things I'm doing are great, but the most important part of me losing weight has been to tackle the negative beliefs that I have about myself and my body and food and exercise, which brings me to the next big lesson that I learned last year, and that is mindset is everything. When I was a kid, my favorite joke was when you put your hand on someone's head like this, and you moved your fingers around and you said, "What's that?" And the person says, "What?" And you say, "A brain sucker, what's it doing?" And the other person says, "What?" And you say, "Starving." I thought that was so hilarious. And, I still think it's hilarious. But here's the thing. Up until a few years ago, I thought that it was funny just because the brain sucker was on the person's head, sucking the person's brain. It never occurred to me that the real reason that it was supposed to be funny was that it was an insult suggesting that the person had no brain. And that's why it's starving. Oh my gosh, what a dork I am. How did I miss that for so many years? That's how I feel I am with life. Like, here I am living life thinking that I get it, but it turns out that the joke is on me. I have missed the boat big time. I have missed the freaking boat. My other videos talk a lot about the mess that I have been and that I still am in life. And if you're really curious about that, I'll put a link at the end of this video for you to watch. But the whole brain damage thing last year has forced me to come to terms with what has been out of whack for me my whole life. And that is my mindset. What I believe deep down at the very core definition level of me has me flailing and often failing in life. And now that I know this, that is what I have dedicated my life to changing. Changing beliefs like I'm a failure to believing the truth, which is I am really successful in many, many ways. Or changing the belief that I don't deserve happiness, wealth, or love to believing that I actually do. It seems fundamental. It seems crazy that I would even have beliefs like that, but it's not uncommon for people who had crappy childhoods and trauma like mine to develop these kinds of erroneous beliefs about themselves, which wouldn't be such a big deal if we could just identify that we have these negative beliefs and then just tell ourselves to stop believing them. And that's it. It's a done deal. But unfortunately, the other thing that I have learned is that it doesn't work that way. Our beliefs were formed usually when we were just tiny, learning about the world and how we fit into it, and we have been living out those paradigms our whole lives. So thinking them away doesn't work. We've got to actively seek to uproot them and replace them, and that takes conscious, purposeful effort. I have a series of videos that deals with changing negative core beliefs that are pulling us down in life to ones that serve us so that we can get on with living happy, confident, fulfilling lives, the ones that we are meant to live. If you're like me and you have recognized some negative patterns in your life that you'd really like to turn around, working on what thinking is driving those patterns is the way to go. So I'll leave a link to that playlist at the end too. The natural consequence of me working on my mindset is the realization that I'm not a victim. I am in charge of my life and what's going on in it, which is the next big lesson I learned last year. This is a jagged little pill to swallow, especially when I have been through such a hard year this past year and a half. Like, am I responsible for the inflammation in my brain that caused me to have a disability? Am I responsible for my torn meniscus causing my knee to not want to bend? Of course, there are things in our life that are completely out of our control. And sometimes we truly are victims. As a child, I didn't have control over my environment or things that happened to me that were traumatic. I'm not saying that we have control over those kinds of things, but what I am saying is how we choose to react to those things is in our control, especially once we become adults. Like, how can I be 54 years old and still suffering the effects of what happened to me in my childhood? I mean, that was forever ago. I have control over that. I can choose to heal. Accepting that I'm not a victim also means that I have to take responsibility for how my life has turned out in ways that I didn't want it to turn out or didn't think I wanted it to turn out. Another jagged little pill. Because we create our own realities by living out our beliefs, which is what I talked about a minute ago. This is something that most of us don't want to hear. I know I didn't, because it's easier to blame someone else. It's easier for me to blame my parents for a whole slew of things, like not teaching me how to be financially responsible, so that I'm a mess financially now. They were not physically affectionate, so I have abandonment and rejection issues now. They moved us around a ton, so I have a problem forming relationships and friendships or other deep connections. Oh my gosh, the list goes on forever. But at some point, when I own the fact that I'm not good with finances, or that I react strongly to any hint of rejection, or that I have abandonment or attachment problems, etc., when I realize that those things are popping up as problems in my life right now, that's now on me. I have to take control of my life, and I have to find ways to heal and find ways to move on. I have to find ways to change the beliefs that are driving my behaviors. I am in control, which actually reminds me of one of my favorite poems called Invictus by William Ernest Henley. I'll put the whole poem on here for you to pause and read if you like, but I'm just going to read the last stanza out to you now. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I actually memorized this like a good 35 years ago. Better late than never, I guess, to have it really sink into my heart. I finally have accepted this fact and embraced the empowerment that this brings me, which is exactly what the next big lesson of last year was for me. And that is, I have the power to manifest anything, and I mean anything, that I truly want in life. After all that I just said about mindset and not being a victim and about taking control of my life, this should have gone without saying. But for me, I guess I'm a little dense because it needed to be said. Not just said, but actually really taken into my belief system. Somehow, somewhere, I had picked up the attitude that my whole purpose as a mom who had kids later in life was for me to live long enough to raise my 3 kids to adulthood. I just never saw anything in life past that. How sad is that? I mean, where was my brain? I'm only 54. Now that I have 2 kids who will graduate in a year and a half and a third who will graduate in 3.5 years, I have realized that, I want to live a lot longer than just long enough to see my kids graduate. It's not over for me. I have a whole lot of life ahead of me if I decide to actually start living it instead of surviving it. If I had the power to control how things turned out for me in the past, I also have the power to control how they are turning out for me today and tomorrow and the next day. I can still achieve some of the things that I feel like I've missed out on before. Just because I'm on the older side of things doesn't mean that I can't still create the life that I always dreamed of. I can still do that. I've been using a couple of different tools to help embed this truth further into my mind, and I'm already starting to see the results of that. Starting this channel actually has been a big manifestation of that mindset shift. It's something that I've wanted to do for a while, but I kept putting it off and putting it off, letting doubts, fears, and insecurities get in my way. It feels so good to finally embrace my power to create and thrive and achieve my heart's desires. So now I'm making big plans for my life after my kiddos leave the nest. It's about time that I figured this one out too, right? And that takes me to the last big lesson that I learned this year, and that is I am not alone. This is actually kind of an embarrassing thing for me to learn just this past year, because now that I have embraced this fact, I see how I have always been surrounded by people who love me and support me. At school, at work, at church, with friends, with family. Holy cow. When I look back over my life, I see it, and I especially see it and feel it right now in the community that I have been a part of for almost 15 years. How they stepped up for me when I went through a week-long hospitalization a year and a half ago. It was incredible. At the beginning, I was showered with kind words and messages and gifts and rides for me and my kids because I couldn't drive for a couple of months, meals, and even financial support. But that support didn't stop even when my life sort of settled down for me. Because, like I said before, it was always there, just more apparent when I went through a health crisis. I finally opened my eyes last year and understood it, not just up here, but here. Despite the fact that I have pretty much lived my life doing everything on my own, including raising my kids, the truth is that none of us are really ever alone. There is help. There is love. There is connection to be had if we are willing to open up, look around, and take advantage of it. I hope you know this too. I hope that you know that you are not alone. Yes, we all have different challenges, and there are certain things that we just have to do on our own. But that doesn't mean that there aren't others around us waiting and willing to be given the chance to assist, to comfort, to lend a listening ear, to help us out in a crunch, to lift our heavy loads just by loving us. I hope that you see what I have failed to see for so long. This has been a serious growth year for me. On one hand, I feel sad that it took me so long to really grasp these concepts to the point that I'm integrating them into my life. But on the other hand, I'm also very grateful that it's never too late to learn. Now, the real test of how well I have learned these things, of course, is the application of them. And that is what I have been deep in the middle of for the past couple of months. And how I'm doing that is what I share in the playlist I mentioned earlier. And that should be popping up for you to watch in just a sec. Since I've made so much progress in just a short period of time, I'm super excited to see how this year unfolds. For the first time in a really long time, I'm excited about life and what is coming up next. So I'm looking forward to reporting some spectacular results at the end of this year, 2025. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.